What up, YouTube? It's your boy LifeofRudeDude, back with another video today. Hope everybody's doing well. Remember, health is wealth, so take care of yourself. I'm over here in the HEB parking lot, about to go in there and grab some things real quick. Before I do so, I came across a video I want to bring to you guys' attention. I don't know if you guys are familiar with DANE CALLOWAY. He's got a YouTube and he's also got a Patreon. And what he does, man, he kind of exposes, some of the things that are going on in reference to Black people's history, and I don't want to say conspiracy theory, but he's got some valid points about certain things. He did a video just recently about the Texas winter storm. Some of the things that he pointed out, I was surprised, and I was like, wow, that could be a possibility. Anyway, man, I want y'all to check it out, and you guys let me know what you think. Here it goes.
Much of the country faces a blast of bitterly cold weather this morning, along with a series of snowstorms threatening the east and Midwest. An icy mass of air will dive down from western Canada, reaching as far south as Texas by this weekend.
The polar vortex is going to pay us a visit, and it is not going to be a very pleasant guest, unfortunately, bringing with it the coldest air in the world right now, down Canada and all the way down to Texas. We have a big blocking warm high across the Arctic that is displacing and forcing an Arctic invasion across the nation's heartland, and boy, is it going to get cold.
CO everyone. I just wanted to touch bases with you all while going over a few things concerning the man-made ice storm that left Texas enduring temperatures below 0 degrees just this past week. Now, many of you may be familiar with the stories of just how realistically unprepared millions of Texans were once the power in their homes was shut off without notice, due to tons of images and videos going viral across the net. However, I saw a few things that caught my eye, and be sure to get in the comments below and tell me what you think. Now, about a week before the storm came, some Texans were already without power in particular areas. And according to the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT for short, who is in charge of the Texas power grid, the reason for these abrupt service interruptions, or what they call planned resource outages, was due to ERCOT conducting scheduled power rotations for particular residents in specified zip codes of Texas until further notice. What's interesting here is that they did not inform the public of these voluntary outages on their website under the tab labeled public notices. But what they did note, however, is how they are preparing for a storm to come. The public notice on the date of February 8th, 2021 says the Electric Reliability Council of Texas is issuing an OCN for an extreme cold weather system approaching Thursday, February 11th, 2021 through Monday, February 15th, with temperatures anticipated to remain 32 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Review fuel supplies, prepare to preserve fuel to best serve peak load, and notify ERCOT of any known or anticipated fuel restrictions. Review planned resource outages and consider delaying maintenance or returning from outage early. Listen to that. And then it says, review and implement winterization procedures. Notify ERCOT of any changes or conditions that could affect system reliability. End quote. This alone says a lot in itself, because for one, they were in fact prepared to winterize their power grid an entire week before the storm actually came. And it's a lot of false narratives out there claiming that the Texas government was just simply unprepared for below freezing weather But now you know for sure that there's no excuse for nearly 5 million people suffering from no power in their homes when the damn electric management company themselves had more than enough time to prevent this from happening. And that's according to their own website. It has always been my best interest to tell people the truth, no matter what, and not from some biased far left or a close right swing of things neither. Just simply straightforward. And of course I realize what's really going on here, and it's quite obvious that it's not what the media makes it out to be in nearly all cases. So I feel as though that it's only right to continuously spread the truth to bring about systematic positive change here, because nobody can save us but us. Weeks prior and leading up to the day of the storm, Texans who watched YouTube videos were met with ads specified to their zip codes by way of their IP addresses. One of those ads was to influence people to take a quiz in order to qualify for solar panels at a discounted rate as a means for powering their homes.
Don't know this, but in 2005, the federal government passed the Energy Policy Act. This federal law granted everyday homeowners access to thousands of dollars to invest in upgrading their homes with solar panels. This is why you've seen so many of your neighbors going solar over the years. People are literally getting paid to go green. But this program won't be around forever, and it's on a first-come, first-served basis. So, if you want to see exactly how much you could get paid to go solar this year, I want you to click the little blue button below to take our 60-second Go Solar quiz. Once you complete the quiz, you'll instantly know your chances of getting paid to go solar. And if this sounds too good to be true, then wait until you hear this.
Another thing that I wanted to point out is how the Texas power grid works. According to the year 2020 diagram of how Texas generates electricity, ERCOT details that the power grid is 2% solar, 11% nuclear, 18% coal, 23% wind, and of course 46% natural gas, being as though Texas independently produces more natural gas than any other said corporation, or rather state of America. And with the Texas power grid being 46% natural gas, 11% nuclear, and 18% coal, how can some frozen wind turbines and snow-covered solar panels that was allegedly winterized just a week before become the main reason why nearly 5 million homes in Texas were without power for days? How?
Number of generation plants that have been taken offline, like your wind turbines that are frozen over in various parts of the state. One of our nuclear plants had to be taken offline. So there's a huge demand, a very limited supply. It is a system-wide failure across the state.
Now let's pause this for a second and reflect on him stating that, quote, one of our nuclear plants had been taken offline. And it's odd that he would make such a bold statement without actually giving you the details about why the entire power grid was shut off without public warning due to only 25% of its green energy system, mind you, being directly affected by the weather. The Texas governor is claiming his innocence by showcasing that he's investigating the reason behind the blackout. But we all know that it only affected the homeless and the elderly, and of course, low-income residents and definitely the middle class. So if he wants to conduct an investigation, then he must also include himself. I mean, only a corporation can hide behind corporations and get away with it, right? Let's be real. Who's really in charge here? Which segues to this clip I'm going to play right now of the CEO of ERCOT being interviewed by CNN, believe it or not, just a few days ago. Pay close attention to detail here.
And joining us now is Bill Magnus. He's the president and CEO of the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, known as ERCOT. Mr. Magnus, thank you very much for being with us. I know you have had a very, very busy and intense week. How did this happen? How did a catastrophe of this level happen?
What we saw with the storm that came into Texas, which, as you've been reporting, is unprecedented and causing tragic outcomes all over the state, was a terrible event for the grid, for the electric grid. The reason is, on the electric grid, at every moment of the day, we have to keep power in balance. Demand and supply have to be very closely in balance. If they get too far out of balance, the system can get very unstable. If we let it get it far enough out of balance for long enough, it causes a catastrophic blackout where it can take an indeterminate amount of time to fix it. So those are the worst outcomes that grid operators like ERCOT try to prevent. What we saw when the storm came in was the demand on the system spiking to levels we've never seen in the winter season in Texas, and the supply, also because of the storm, having a lot of the generation plants knocked out as the storm blew through the state. So we had the worst kind of combination we could see. Yeah. And we got to a point where we weren't going to be able to serve the demand, and we had to ask for outages that unfortunately had to stay in place for days until we could stabilize the system.
The governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, says that just days before, you assured him the grid was ready, that you assured him that ERCOT could handle this coming storm. Here's what he said yesterday.
They said 5 days before the winter storm hit, the ERCOT CEO assured ERCOT, and I quote, "We're ready for the cold temperatures coming our way."
Why did you say you were ready?
Well, when ERCOT says it's ready, what ERCOT needs to do is warn generators, warn transmission owners that we see a big event happening. And we did that in the week before the storm. We don't own the power generation or the transmission lines. We're more the traffic cop or the air traffic control on the system. So we were warning that we were seeing these conditions coming, and we knew that we may have to implement the rotating outages that ended up coming. And as we saw the supply get lower and the demand get higher on Sunday night, those rotating outages were what we implemented. Yeah. That's what we drill on, and that's what we prepare for. Unfortunately, those have terrible outcomes for people when they have to last a long time, but that's the preparation we did to take that action effectively before we saw a much, much worse outcome.
I just don't think that a warning is the same as readiness, and that Texans consider being in the dark and without heat for days as being ready. That just doesn't sound like you were ready. And in terms of being unprecedented, I hear you. It was a horrible storm. But in 2011, you also had a horrible winter storm. And back then, there was a lot of talk about having to winterize the system. And it doesn't seem as though it was done.
Well, the challenge that the system had Sunday night as we went into these outages was, as we saw the spiking demand, the supply on the system did see a lot of losses. Generators, because of reasons that had to do primarily with the storm coming in, were not able to provide power to the grid. So certainly that had to do with why we had to end up calling these outages in such a large magnitude.
I guess is my question. How is that being ready?
I think that's something that everyone in the utility industry is going to have to look at and determine how we manage systems that are this intense in the winter season. Certainly that there's going to be a tremendous amount of assessment and review of what we can do to make this never happen again. But I think our role and what we feel like we took care of, although there was a lot of trouble for everyone in the state in this, was to be sitting here today saying that most Texans are being able to be restored. Power is going to be back on as normal, and we're not talking to you about a much longer, a much more devastating blackout.
So, but I mean, are you saying that this was a success story on some level?
No, this is not a success story. I think that we understand we're in the electric business. We know that electricity is essential to civilization. And it's awful for us in the business to see systems that can't make electricity available to everyone. So no, I think we're going to have to look at this very carefully and understand how we can manage the events better as an entire industry. So not a success, but there were worse outcomes, as bad as these were, that we needed to step in and prevent.
On Tuesday, Governor Abbott said that he thought that the top executives at ERCOT, obviously including you, should resign. Will you resign?
Well, right now, we're focused on getting the rest of Texas power back. That's the absolute focus. Next week, We're going to be having legislative hearings to review the entire event. And I think at that time, we can assess what next steps should be. Right now, we want to keep ourselves focused on getting out of the problem and getting Texans all their power back.
I understand. But when the smoke clears, at least 15 people have died this week in Texas, maybe up to 23 people. There have been devastating results to people's homes. There have been fires. How can you keep your job after a week like this?
We're accountable to the people and the leadership of Texas. We're going to go and explain the steps we took and how that played into the entire situation on the electric grid. If that's the outcome, that's the outcome. That's where we're accountable. And we want to be accountable and explain what we did. And then we'll see what happens.
If the whole state's electrical grid can go down in a winter storm, is it time to join the rest of the country's electrical grids and not be just Texas independent if this is going to keep happening?
Well, that really wouldn't have helped us in this storm. Our neighbors who power could have come in from were having similar problems to us. The power grids to the east and to the west and that are in Texas were having similar issues. So I don't think
but
that
nowhere was as bad as Texas,
was the
Mr.
cause
Magnus.
of the problem.
I mean, nowhere was as bad as Texas. You know, you could have borrowed, you could move electricity around. That's how it's set up. You know, Oklahoma, which was also hit with this same storm, did not have the same problems. This was a Texas-specific problem.
Well, and I think what was Texas-specific was not something that necessarily could have been managed by not having a Texas electric grid. In fact, the biggest problem has to do with what I was describing before, that we saw the supply not be able to keep up. And once the supply couldn't keep up, we had to take actions to restore stability to the system. And those actions are obviously going to be reviewed and examined very closely by us, by everyone else. And all those questions that are arising about what comes next, those are decisions for policymakers to make. We defer to them on all of those. And we'll see what policymakers want to do to prepare us to never see this kind of event again.
But last, do you think the people of Texas should have confidence in your management today?
The people of Texas can have confidence in the grid operators who made the very difficult decisions they had to make Sunday night when we saw the system getting unstable. Those decisions prevented much, much worse blackouts that we would still be suffering from in a much more extreme way today. So whether people have confidence in me or not, the grid operators who have to make those tough decisions in real time as critical conditions are right in front of them, they should have confidence in those folks because they made some good decisions.
Bill Magnus, we really appreciate you coming on New Day and trying to explain this to all of our viewers. Obviously, we'll be watching with what needs to change in Texas going further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Five ERCOT board members are resigning, and now the Travis County DA is opening a criminal investigation into those power outages. Let's start with the resignations, which include the chairman of the board of directors. They were filed with the Public Utility Commission of Texas and will now go into effect tomorrow. According to records, 4 of the board members live out of state. Governor Greg Abbott says he welcomes those resignations. He's promising to investigate ERCOT and find out what went wrong during the winter storm last week.
Now, senior reporter Tony Plahetsky joining us live with the very latest on the criminal investigation into the power outages. Tony.
And Brian and Terry, it is significant to note that while legislative hearings begin later this week on Thursday to try to determine what went wrong, this is now a criminal investigation launched by the Travis County District Attorney here in Austin. I spoke with him just a short time ago. He confirmed the opening of the investigation by his office's Public Integrity Unit. He did not cite any target of the investigation, but what he did say is that the investigation will look into whether any person or entity should be charged with a crime. Just looking at my notes, one thing he said is that they will do everything they can to hold powerful actors accountable whose actions or inactions may have led to the suffering. Again, this is now the latest turn in these outages that left millions of Texans in the dark last week, now moving from a legislative inquiry to now a criminal investigation here in Austin by the Travis County District Attorney, Jose Garza.